Hello and welcome to another episode of Christ and Consoles. My name is Chris.
I'm Brandon.
And we are here to host the show about theology, culture, gaming, all sorts of things that we study on our own, things that we come across, as well as answering questions or comments from our chat on Twitch. Thank you for joining us on Twitch, to our viewers there, as well as our viewers on BibleDiscoveryTV.com.
Speaking of questions,
yes,
Chris.
Yes.
I have some questions for you about a video game that you played.
Right. Do you want to explain? Maybe we should explain what we're doing this episode, because maybe you'll be kind of confused about the title there.
I'm going to ask him questions about a video game that he's been playing.
Right. Trying a new thing here, you know.
Why the theology is stupid.
Right. Talking.
It's kind of pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. Talking about. We're gonna maybe do more episodes like this.
Sure.
That are talking about a game's story and just unpacking why it might sound deep, but it might not be accurate to reality.
Sure. So this is a game you've been playing called Xenoblade. Well, you played called Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
Yeah, I played all the way through.
Almost every time you stopped playing it, you sought me out to vent about something stupid.
Well, yeah.
So all I know are the stupid parts of this game. Which
no, I told you most of the game.
There we go.
Well,
so the whole game's stupid.
I mean, part of it is IMO, in my opinion, but the other part of it is no. I'm like factually wrong.
I just remember you showing me the game before this, and I watched 4 hours of it because we streamed it. But by the time you showed me 30 minutes of it, I'm like, I've never been so far out than this right now. I was
it's a
not
matter
into
of
that at all.
Genre, your preferred genre,
Yeah, and my preferred genre isn't trash. Anyway, so.
Well, I mean, that's a little harsh, I think.
This game. Let's start with the baselines for this game. It's made by a guy named Tetsuya Takahashi.
Yes, Tetsuya Takahashi. He was the executive director and the scenario writer.
And apparently, you were telling me that the Xenoblade games, which are the only Xeno games I've heard of, were not the only games that he's made. He's also made other Xeno insert thing here games.
Yes.
So what games were those?
Okay,
just to get a basis.
Sort of in the late 1990s to early 2000s, he made.
What a great time that was.
Yeah, he made Xenosaga and Xenogears. I forget what the order is. I've played Xenoblade 1 and 2. I never played any of the Xenosaga and X. Xenoblade Chronicles X.
That was the one I was like, this looks awful to me.
Regardless.
This is to me.
I've never played the Xenosaga games or the Xenogears games, so I don't know how they play or whatever. I just know I want to do more research on his other works based on what I saw of his writing in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. So that's why I...
Sure. Just to also preface, I'm being very mean. I'm in a jokey mood right now. I'm being very mean about the game. I don't like the genre of the game.
Yeah, it's
So you like the gameplay... Mostly. You really liked it in the first one.
Yes, I liked it in the first one.
So there we go.
The second one fell short in a lot of ways. It's not like I'm just like,
this guy sucks and everything he makes sucks.
Right.
I'm just saying I'm not into that genre of games. So we answered what games he made, but who is this guy?
Okay. So Tetsuya Takahashi is a guy who both he and his wife both admitted during like interviews and stuff to liking theology and philosophy, and they just enjoy like learning it. So yeah, in the same way that, because there's some people who are Christians and who like they love reading God's word in the Bible and knowing more about God because they love God.
Sure.
Whereas there are other people who just really love the study of something, right? Whether it's history or math or whatever. His thing is theology and mythology. And this is kind of my sort of core, I guess, issue with what I was seeing in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. At least in terms of, there's other problems I have with the game, but like put that aside for now. In terms of the cosmology and the way the world functions, theology of it, is that he tends to mishmash like religions and theologies and mythologies and kind of put them all together.
Sure.
And it doesn't seem to be any sort of he doesn't seem concerned about the coherency of putting them together. He just knows about lots of different theological and philosophical things and kind of puts them together. Now, I mean, then maybe the oversimplification for some people who are fans of his work, but I found that it was kind of a little confusing because I think a lot of people who saw his work would think, man, this guy is so deep.
Sure.
But in actuality, it's like, well, the things he's referencing don't make sense in this context, and I'm gonna give examples as to why that is.
Yeah, sure. We should say right now, first off, spoiler alert.
Oh yeah. Oh, this is
hard
spoilers.
If you want to play this game, if you're in the middle of playing this game, just turn the episode off.
We're getting into
We're
gonna get into like the big spoilers
spoilers
for the end of the game.
So I think my first question, it's a Japanese RPG.
Yep.
My first question is an indie Japanese RPG. Tell me about the party. Who are the main characters, and who are the characters that are with you throughout the game?
Well, that's the confusing thing. I mean, one confusing thing about it, maybe not so much for some people, but like you have your protagonist, and he's sort of this wide-eyed idealist.
His name is Rex.
His name is Rex, okay. And it's really weird because like he believes that there's this place called Elysium, which is a very right away he's throwing in terms like Elysium is paradise. I think it's a Greek mythology. I think it's a paradise, Elysium. Okay.
If you're playing, by the way, if you're playing Theology bingo, you're definitely going to hit a bingo this episode.
You're going to hit a definite bingo. Just this mythology, theology bingo. He just throws it all in and jumbles it up.
This might be the rare time where you hit every piece on the bingo board.
The free space is not even needed.
Not even needed.
You know?
Yeah.
So Rex is idealist. He believes that Elysium exists, which I guess it appears to be sort of a rare way of thinking. Like no one else around him really seems to take much stock in the fact that the paradise exists, where everyone can live. Because what happens is everyone lives on these giant creatures called Titans. Mm-hmm. That's how it's like think of it like continents, except they're like living creatures, which is kind of a cool concept.
It's a cool concept. Living on the shoulders of giants, like the Atlas statue, Atlas holding up the world.
Something like that.
Except literally, and he's not holding up the world. You're just on his bicep.
Yeah, and there's So like when you explore the world, you explore like these creatures who are so big that you inhabit them, which is cool.
Yeah, it's a cool concept.
Yeah,
sure.
But and so the Titans die out over time, and so like the conflict that sort of initially starts the game with is people are running out of room. How this war is starting because everyone wants whatever land's left, kind of thing. But he meets. I'm kind of like short forming it.
Yeah, I just want to pause right here. Rex believes in Elysium. Does it seem to be a afterlife thing, or does it seem to be like there is a physical place on this Titan?
It's a physical place. It's not on any Titan though.
Okay.
It's just a place. It's elusive and
so it's not like it's not an afterlife, it's not another dimension, it's just like it's out there somewhere.
I'm sure there's a fan theory out there where it's like at this point, after this part in the game, it's all just his final hallucination before like after he died or something, because everyone has that fan theory, right?
Sure. Okay.
But I don't think the game was alluding to that. It's more like a physical place. And like through like a game of a telephone, it became this mystical place. Sure. But really, it's actually not a mystical place at all. We'll get to that.
All right. So next up in the party.
Right. So so he meets a character named Pyra, and Pyra is like, and to use more terminology, she is supposed to be the Aegis, which is, of course, a Greek word for. Usually it's a shield in mythology, and it's just supposed to be this really powerful bulwark. There's not much known about it, but in the original Japanese version, actually, because they obviously translate it from the Japanese version. In the original Japanese version, she's referred to not as an Aegis, but as the Holy Grail. I don't really see how that's applicable. I mean, I don't know much about the Holy Grail in particular, but it doesn't make sense. It's not like I guess he gets killed early on before just as he meets her.
Sure.
And she gives half of his life to him so that he can come back to life.
Okay.
So maybe in that sense she's like the Holy Grail because she gives life to Rex. But yeah. So I mean, yeah, I mean, and other party members are mostly just like, I mean, they inhabit the world. They're not really.
Yeah.
They don't pertain to.
They don't. Yeah, they're not really
greater
the main part of the story, except for one other one that you told me about.
They don't. Well, all the party members matter for the story, but they don't pertain to the overall like the cosmology of the world. Yeah. You know.
So tell me about Pyra. It's called the Holy Grail in Japanese.
Yeah.
Called the Aegis in English.
In the English version, yeah.
Who is she? What does she do?
Well, here's the thing. She's supposed to be a blade, and a blade, the terminology.
So she's a sword.
She is a physical. I mean, the way I understood it up to Endgame was that she's like the physical embodiment of a weapon.
Okay.
And so like she's like when you.
So she like a robot?
She's not a robot.
Okay.
That's actually a spoiler because like you don't know what she is for most of the game. The game tries to explain it, but it's very muddy. She's basically a person who just so happens to be like tied to a weapon.
Okay.
Whether it's a sword or an axe or whatever. And there's lots of people of creatures like her that are like weapons as well as people.
Okay.
Right.
And she is bonded to her weapon.
Yes.
And bonded to the wielder of her weapon,
yes,
which is
Rex. And that's how that works. Is like there's a bunch of blades in the world, and they have to bond themselves to their drivers, which is what you call when you bond a driver to somebody. That somebody is a driver.
Sure. So the blades are bonded to drivers.
Yes.
Rex is the driver
of the
Pyra's
Aegis
blade.
To Pyra, and Pyra is the Aegis.
Great.
So. That's really it gets really more confusing because then later on you start to get like genetic experimentation where like you can be like half human and half blade, and it's like, well, I don't know how that works. Mm-hmm. And you're
can you be your own driver, like because you're half human?
Yeah, and like when a driver dies, they're supposed like their blade is supposed to die with them.
Okay.
Except just sometimes they don't because they're like half human, so they still have their own humanity, enough humanity in them. So it gets really confusing.
Okay.
You know, so.
Cool. So.
But.
Okay. So continue. It's like the rest of the party's not really important to the discussion we're having today.
Yeah. So, to the overall.
Okay. So who is the antagonist?
Well, the antagonist is. For the first like 5 chapters, it's a guy named Malos, and Malos is. Turns out he is another Aegis. Now, up to that point, for a while, we think there's only ever one Aegis, but turns out there's 2.
Sure.
So.
And I'm sure he's not the only bad guy because this is a Japanese game, however. So there's going to be twists and turns. And 15 different bad guys.
There's twists and turns, and
the different Super Saiyan levels of the first bad guy.
Well, that's yeah. I mean, it's written in a certain way where it's like the villain succeeds. And then the good guys go, oh, wait a minute, superpower. And then they beat the villain. And the villain goes, aha, but I have this superpower.
Rangers. It's like Power Rangers.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Okay. Cool.
You know?
So you said his name was
Malos.
Malos.
Yes.
Okay.
Which I don't believe has any significance. I think it's just
not supposed to be like a play on malice?
Could be. That could be. But I didn't see... Usually when Takahashi puts something in his games, it's like a direct reference to something. Yeah. So like I actually want to give some examples of that.
Okay, go ahead.
So examples I want to give is back when he wrote Xenosaga. He used something called the Zohar. The Zohar is basically it's a very foundational book in a false religion, a pagan religion. It's a mystical religion based on Judaism. It's not Judaism, to be clear. It's a corruption of Judaism. It's an offshoot. And the Zohar is a foundational book within the religion called Kabbalah. I think for a while, like Madonna said she was part of the Kabbalah, like probably doing part of the thing. For a while it was like a fad religion kind of thing, but it's very mystical and it's not grounded. It's very much like there's like all the supernatural stuff, and I'm not an expert on this subject, so I kind of want to just go past it quickly. But that's the Zohar, and the Zohar in Xenosaga is this like super foundational like monolith. Think like
2001
Space Odyssey. Yes, exactly. And it's just there, and it's supposed to contain all the information of the whole universe.
Sure. Is Xenosaga and Xenogear related at all to Xenoblade?
I believe
they're like in the same universe.
Well, the funny thing is it appears that Takahashi doesn't want to make direct references to it, like direct connections, but he likes to make nods to Xenosaga and Xenogears. So, for example, the symbol on the Aegis on Pyra is the same symbol as the Zohar.
Okay, so it's like heavily implied that
they're
they are connected, a different dimension or whatever,
something like that. Like they're kind of connected in that way.
It's like Takahashi's trying to do what like Tarantino does, where like all his movies are in the same world.
Yeah, and it feels like he's kind of leaning in that direction. He kind of because I think part of the reason is he's never gotten as far as I know this happened in Xenosaga. He's never actually gotten a chance to like finish his stories.
Okay.
Like every time he's started a story, he has wanted to do like a 6-episode like epic. And he gets 3 episodes in or whatever, and they run out of money or like the game doesn't sell well enough, and they just have to stop it. So as far as I know, he's never actually finished what he was trying to get through and saying. So there's like connecting points that happen every time. He's like, hey, the Zohar, right? It looks like the Aegis' symbol, right? And so, but my point in talking about the Zohar here is that the Zohar in reality and the Zohar in his games are different things. So let's continue. In Xenosaga, this surprised me. This shocked me because I didn't know you could get away with this. Like in about early 2000s or so. In Xenosaga, there's Jesus. Jesus is in Xenosaga. Like he actually wrote in Jesus as one of the characters.
Well, let me ask you this:
It's crazy.
Was Xenosaga translated and ported over?
Yes.
Okay. To like North America.
Yes. Right. Which is like, how did that happen?
Okay. Because I was gonna be like, if it was in Japan, I could see that.
Like that would have been like an instant like
red flag
N rating or whatever. Like, yeah, ESRB like N rating or something. Because like, but
it's pronounced Jesus, not Jesus.
Yeah. Well, there's a different character named Yeshua.
Oh. Okay.
So first of all, I wasn't even bring this up, but let's
okay
dissect this. Yeshua and Jesus in Xenosaga are different characters. That's not how it is in reality. Yeshua is just the Jewish name for Jesus in reality. So already we're off the mark here. But I want to actually read a small little piece of lore about from the Xenosaga wiki, and just to because like I could have written it all down, but I was like it's just right here. So listen to this, and we can point out like what's wrong with all this. So he is speaking of Xenosaga's Jesus, the false Jesus. He lived his years in having his followers, known as the apostles, to teach others to save themselves by following his word. This included Yeshua, that's a different person in this context, his partner, Mary Magdalene, and Mary Magdalene's maiden, who would later be reincarnated as the character Shion Uzuki. So first, okay, wow. So the first paragraph, okay. Jesus never married. He never had a partner, Mary Magdalene. What that is a reference to sort of like this is before the time of the Da Vinci Code, but there was a heresy that was discussed in like the early church and maybe like mid I don't know like what I don't know now top of my head like 8th 9th century or something about him being partnered with Mary Magdalene, and so like his offspring became the kings of Europe and stuff like that. So like, or the Pope. So like that way there was like a lineage of supremacy, right? But that's not what happened. There's no indication from the Bible that Jesus ever married.
Chapter and verse, please.
Chapter and verse. This is why sola scriptura is so important, right? So also reincarnation, not a concept in Christianity. So there's no concept of reincarnation. But here we have that mishmash that I was talking about. Let's keep going here. Yeshua, this other character, was Jesus' proxy and was commanded by Jesus to leave behind and protect the Lemmageddon.
Okay, what's the Lemmageddon?
Now, I had to look this up because it's very obscure.
Sure.
But the Lemmageddon, I'm probably mispronouncing it, is an anonymously done compiled work from the 17th century.
Okay.
That basically it's a book of demonology. It's about what demons do, how they operate, what is the hierarchy of demons.
Okay.
There's like something like 72 demons.
Sure.
That are like, some are dukes, some are.
And I'm sure these are all like the pop culture demons that we know today.
It's really interesting if you actually look it up, how much our pop culture has been influenced by non-biblical pagan works of like the anywhere from the 14th to 17th century. So yes, you're right.
So I'm assuming like succubus, incubus, Cambion, Krampus.
Succubus and incubus are actually from a separate work.
Okay.
That was called the Malus Maleficarum.
Okay.
Which is a separate book written in 1486.
Okay.
I have all these facts in my head.
Yep.
1486. It was basically a compilation of the Inquisition's findings.
Sure.
About witches and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's basically where we get a lot of our mythology, like you said. So we get incubus and succubus are from the Malus Maleficarum. Love potions, the idea that witches can fly, are all from the Malus Maleficarum. So it's interesting. So we're influenced by such an old document. However, it was actually a very popular document. The Malus Maleficarum for about 200 years was the second most popular book outside of the Bible.
Great.
For about 200 years.
Great.
So this is why it so affects and influences our pop culture. But going back to the Lemmageddon.
Yeah.
The Lemmageddon, the book of demonology. Yeah, you get like 72 demons, and they're all like, some are dukes, some are barons, and all this stuff, and you get names like Belial and I think Asmodeus might be one of them, but like you've heard these names before, but they're from the Lemmageddon, and it's strictly not canon. It's unbiblical. Don't read it.
Yeah.
But that's what it is.
Well, interesting that we get Belial from that, because the book of Belial is 1/3 of the Satanic Bible.
Really?
Yep.
I see. Yeah. So I haven't looked that up, so I don't know much about that. But yeah. So going into this now. Yeshua was Jesus' proxy and was commanded by Jesus to leave behind and protect Lemmageddon. What? Like, so you're telling me that Takahashi took the concept of the Lemmageddon, the book of demonology, and said that Jesus was told some people to protect a book of demonology that was written sometime in the 17th century.
Yeah.
When Jesus he was resurrected in heaven about 1600 years before, and there's no indication anywhere that he did that. So
see, now it could be like to try to speak in defense of Takahashi. It could literally that he's just like has a dartboard of like, these are religious books,
right?
Or they're like mythological
theological books,
and these are mythological and actual religious like people. So I'm just gonna be like Jesus and Mary Magdalene and Lemmageddon. Okay, there we go.
However you pronounce it.
Yeah, like he could just be trying to give him benefit of the doubt. He could just be like, I'm picking big words that people will not know.
I think he tries to get people to be like, what's that mean? What's that mean? You know, and he makes them investigate. But I just feel like if people are getting the impression that like what he's saying is something like, I don't know, like profound, I think that's what people might get the impression. It's like, I don't feel like it's really profound when you just kind of take theological words
and mash them together.
Just put them all together.
Yeah.
And this is why, this side note here, this is why I believe it's so important that, yes, you can enjoy a thing, and passively, but I believe for the most part, don't be so passive when you ingest something. Like, there's something that's trying to be said and spoken.
Everything has a message.
Everything has a message, and so, that's kind of the message. He's telling a story about Jesus, and so really, this is pretty blasphemous if you think about it.
Sure.
I mean, like, this is very serious. And now just one final sentence from the wiki here. Yeshua, the different person from Jesus, and Mary Magdalene are the actualizations in the real domain of the powers of anima and animus, which came from the collective unconscious. They placed their bodies into the human world and worked as Jesus' disciples. Okay. So,
I heard Animus in there. I think Assassin's Creed.
Right.
I'm assuming that's something different.
yes, I'm not an expert actually on that part of the anima and the animus.
Okay.
But I believe they're also from pagan sources. I'm not sure where they're from though.
Not important.
Yeah, there are a few sources that either way they're from apocryphal works and stuff like that.
Sure.
And they came from the collective unconscious. Collective unconsciousness we've never heard that in scripture. That's not a thing that is brought up as well. So I can keep going. Like there is a point where Jesus is put to death on trial, mocked, tortured, and executed, but not for the reason that he said he was the Son of God.
Okay. Well, let me ask you a
and so
question.
forth. So we can go on from that.
What does this have to do with Xenoblade Chronicles 2?
This has to do with setting up how Takahashi writes, how he thinks,
Okay.
the structure of which he forms his characters, and the way that he forms deified characters in his stories.
Yeah. Okay.
So we can move on from there.
Well, I just want to put on a little point there. That I think it's very funny that he's not even nuancing. He's not even attempting to hide
It's not subtle.
that it's Jesus. Like we were listening to, I bought an album from a secular band I used to love all the time.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, listen to this song. It's so funny to me. It's not even nuanced. He basically says this song's about the Antichrist.
Right.
And it's not even nuanced anymore. I don't even have to look anything up. I feel like Takahashi, call him the Son or something. Don't just call him Jesus. You know, put a little work on my part, right? Come on.
Right. I mean, like, if I know nothing about theology, I guess the Son's kind of a weird name.
The Son.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Like, because I mean, in this is kind of the dangerous thing about this, though. Like, and why it's like kind of a serious thing is because I think like less than 1% of Japan would consider themselves called Christians. I think the population currently is like 130 million. So like less than 1% know a lick about Jesus and about right. So
this is going to be their first.
Right. That's the concerning thing.
This is how they are going to hear about Jesus.
Right, and it's like, what is all this? Like, it's nothing from the Bible.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's the setup. And you just said, like, at least try to hide it a little bit. Okay, we're getting back to Xenoblade Chronicles 2 now.
Yeah, maybe that was his early work. Maybe he hides it now. He hides it now.
That's his early work that I wanted to set up his background. So the god, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, is referred to as the Father.
Okay.
There
we go.
Or the Architect.
Okay. There we go. There's some nuance.
Right.
There we go.
And it's not even close to a proper analogy for God.
Well, no, I would have to assume, not knowing much about him, if we're gonna say it's not an accurate representation of God, but it's a pop culture version of God, it's either the kid with the ant farm, or it's the supercomputer.
Right. No. The issue is that we consider the God to be too much like us sometimes. So what ends up happening, okay, this is, again, more spoilers. The architect is just a human. It's just a guy.
Sure.
Like, what happened was, they refer to him as the Father's architect, but he's just a guy.
Not even a demigod?
He's not even a demigod.
He's just a dude.
He's a scientist.
Okay.
He basically, what happens is, before the creation of the world as is known by the characters in the game, before that world's creation, this person, his name was Klaus. Before he became the architect, he was named Klaus. And
I feel like there's got to have more meaning behind it.
Right,
Klaus,
it's just the way he writes, right? I didn't look up the meaning of the name Klaus, but
it's not like me when I'm DMing and someone asks me like, "Who's this person's name?" and I'm like, "Who is this person's name?" Name generator.
Name generator. Flamgar.
Theanog. His name is Theanog.
That's right. So he's the architect of this world in that sense, because he did fabricate the world that the characters now live in. But he lived in our world. He lived on Earth. Okay. In a space station. And he was harnessing...
He lived on Earth in a space station, or he lived in space?
He lived on like a halo, like from Halo.
Sure, okay,
Halo. He lived in
the Halo ring.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And
Anyone who doesn't know about that, it's just like a ring. It's like Saturn's ring, but robot.
yeah, it's like technology. It's like a
is-
space
yeah,
station,
you
but
can
it
walk
rings
on
it rings
yeah,
the Earth.
You can walk on it.
Yeah. So
Have you
it's
ever
technology.
seen Elysium the movie? It's that.
Right. So what happens is the spaceship. There's a spaceship. The spaceship that he's on houses the conduit,
Okay.
and the conduit, which curiously enough also looks like the Zohar.
Okay.
In shape. At least his version of the Zohar. And he's ranting about like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to use the conduit to transcend dimensions and like become the first like human beings will transcend their limitations, spatial limitations, and become
So he's a
something
mad
greater.
scientist.
Basically, yeah. And like the rest of the ship is like under attack, and he's like, no, I'm gonna save everybody. I'm gonna save everybody and transcend space and time.
Okay.
And he locks himself in the room with the conduit, and all the rest of the spaceship is like, "Where's Klaus? Where's Klaus?" And they're like, "He's locked in the conduit room. What's he doing in there?" Right? So he pushes all the buttons and all the MacGuffins, and something goes, I assume, wrong. Like
Or
it's
very
not,
right.
Right. It's not clear. This is one of those things that he threw into the story where it's not clear whether it was supposed to happen or whether it was an accidental thing. But he pushes all the buttons. He's like, "Oh no!" Blah. And then the world as the characters in this game know it is created.
Sure.
And he gets like stuck in that dimension. So also an interesting thing, the ship that he was, leave it to Takahashi, the ship that was housing the conduit is called the Rhadamanthus.
Okay.
And the Rhadamanthus was a Greek god. He was a son of Zeus. Usually portrayed as one of 3 judges of the underworld.
Okay.
Don't know why. Maybe he wanted to throw in like don't you see the spaceship? This spaceship is like the judge that determines how dimensions are created or something like that.
Sure.
Like
You said he
Takahashi's.
was the son of Zeus? He was a son of Zeus?
Rhadamanthus was a son of Zeus.
A son of Zeus.
Yes.
And he just hung out with James Woods in the underworld.
He hung out with 2 other people, other gods, demigods, or something. Not clear. Don't remember, but yeah.
I'm not saying James Woods in the underworld. That was a Disney
That was a
reference.
Disney reference to Hades, or Hades, as is the original Greek is meant to be.
Gonna call him Hades.
Yes. So what happens is, so you may be asking, he explains all this in like a huge like lore dump right at the end of the game when you first meet him.
That's how you know you have great writing and great
Well-
pacing is when you just lore dump.
Well, what happens is like all the characters are like, well, we have to meet with the architects and to learn about the world and what we can do to save it. And everyone meets him and they're like, oh, you're the architect. You're just like a emaciated guy in a room.
You're Mr. House.
Basically.
Fallout.
Yeah, basically. He mentions like how he created the universe, and he says that he used this is one of the main points that I want to get to here. He uses the Rhadamanthus's computer system, which the humans called the Trinity processor, to create the world.
Okay.
Okay. And he even mentions like one of the characters mentions to him like, that's kind of a weird name, Trinity processor, and he's like, it is a testament to man's hubris. So like Klaus knows what it means, like what the Trinity processor means in the context.
Now, is that what it's called in the Japanese version as well?
I'm not sure actually.
Okay.
But I'd imagine so because it wouldn't work otherwise.
Sure. Well, just calling like Pyra the Holy Grail versus the Aegis.
Right.
I would like to know how much of this confused theology is the translators.
Yeah. I mean, either way, it's confused theology whether it's the Holy Grail or the Aegis, right?
Yes, but I would like to know: is it him that's throwing in all the Christianity nods, or is it the translators?
Right. Yeah. It's a good point.
Like if it's all like Shintoism stuff, the translators are like, North America has no idea what this is.
Like, leave them in because they're exotic, right?
Yeah.
So apparently the Rhadamanthus has 3 cores to its computer system, and it's called the Trinity processor, and it uses the 3 processors to create the new dimension, using the conduit as like the catalyst.
Sure.
So
for the Big Bang.
yeah, basically, which is why one of the reasons why it's so far removed from the actual God of reality.
So
Because he's not, he used material. He's not a god. He's just a dude who used technology.
Yeah. Okay. So also, did it make all life, this Big Bang, or did it just make the Titans?
It made.
And
all,
then like
it made all life in that dimension.
It made all life,
in that dimension,
including the Titans.
Yes, in that dimension.
Okay. So it wasn't like the Titans were made and then the little people evolved on the Titans.
No, it's more like, well, part of it is you find out that blades, going way back to the beginning of our discussion, the blades aren't just people with weapons. They house human DNA.
Okay.
And the point was, Klaus's idea was that he was going to let blades continue to live, and the Aegis was immortal as well. And all that was an attempt to try to get the perfect human.
Okay.
Because he believed that through the intake of knowledge and experiences, a person could attain perfection. So basically a reincarnation type idea.
Sure, yeah.
But that was the idea behind the blades. Now here's the curious thing about the Trinity processors, right? He says outright what the true names of the Aegises are. So it's not like, you all throughout the game you're like, okay, Pyra is one of the Aegises. Malos, he's an Aegis. There's actually 3 Aegises, each of them corresponding to one of the processors, and he calls them Ontos, Logos, and Pneuma. If you know just a little bit of New Testament Greek, that's a direct reference to the biblical Trinity.
See, I don't know any of that, so when I heard Pneuma, I always thought like the Numa Yay guy.
No, it's spelled differently.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So Ontos went off somewhere. Like, he even says that. He says, like, he went off somewhere but never seen again.
Sure.
The Logos is Malos. That's just his real name is Malos' real name is Logos.
Okay.
And Pyra's real name is Pneuma.
Okay.
Now, here's why this makes no sense from a theological perspective. Ontos is the root form of the word where we get the word ontological in English. It refers to the essential, how do I put it? The essential being of a thing. So whatever it is, so like God is ontologically God. He is by his very being God. We are by our being humans. So we are ontologically human. But ontos is the word that's used there. So he went off somewhere. Logos. John chapter 1:1. In the beginning was the Word. The word there used for word is logos.
Okay.
So he's making a connection with Jesus and the logos here. And pneuma, finally. Pneuma is the Greek word for like a breath or spirit. So obviously, it's the same.
We're talking Trinity here.
Talking Trinity. Yep. Talking Holy Spirit here.
Not a huge leap.
It's not a huge leap.
As soon as you hear Trinity processor, you're like, know where this is going.
Well, see, that's the funny thing about it. I was like, oh, Trinity processor, come on, Takahashi. That's a little on the nose. And then he said that. I'm like, what? I couldn't believe it, how like on the nose he was being like, logos, really? Like, but so pneuma is the, I believe it's the Greek word that's used in the New Testament for the Holy Spirit. I need to double check that, but I'm pretty sure.
Okay. So you got the Holy Spirit on your team, and the main bad guy is Jesus.
Right.
Cool.
So here's the weird corruptions that happen here. First of all, ontos. That's a terrible, by process of elimination. If logos is Jesus, pneuma is the Holy Spirit, meant to be the Holy Spirit. Ontos is supposed to be the Father. That's not an accurate word to describe the Father, because it's not as if the other two parts of the Trinity, the people of the Trinity, aren't God ontologically. Mm-hmm. So now you're isolating the ontos to be just the Father, and he went off somewhere.
Sure.
Interesting thing about the logos and what he did with it in the game was Logos, his main like sort of like personality is that he's like a sponge. He just sort of whatever he is around or whoever he's bonded to, that's who he becomes like. So in the game, the Space Pope turns out to be the actual bad guy.
It is a Japanese game.
It is a Japanese game.
The Space Pope is the bad guy.
The Pope turns out to be the bad guy who wants to take over the world, or he sees himself as a person to become deified.
I don't
to become
think
a
I
god.
have ever played a game where there is a Space Pope and he is not the bad guy. I don't think I have ever played a game where there is a Pope and it's not the bad guy. Even Assassin's Creed 2, the Pope is the bad guy. So like,
and
if there's a Pope in your game,
yeah.
super evil.
There's some historical reasons for that. I mean, it's a different episode. We can get into Inquisition and all that.
Sure.
But there's historical reasons for that. But it is funny
I just
just
think
how
it's at this point, it's like, I get it.
right, like
I'm tired of the Pope being the
Pope is
bad guy.
right,
I get it.
Yeah. But so
I'd make it like the Pope's right-hand man at least.
So the Space Pope, I'm just calling him the Space Pope.
Let's call him the Space
What
Pope.
he is. He's a technological, he's a cyborg Pope. So Space Pope, his name is Amalthus, but whatever, Space Pope.
Yeah,
Space
I'm never going to remember that.
Is like evil, and so Malos, or Logos in this case, sort of like absorbs his personality, absorbs his sort of like his way of viewing the world. And it's
okay, hold on. Would we say that the real Jesus is a sponge?
No, he is.
So how could Takahashi even get to that point?
Okay, well, here's my theory as to how he got to this point. Jesus said that I can only do what I see the Father doing, and that I and the Father are one, and that Jesus only does what the Father wills. And so I think my theory is that Takahashi took that concept and distorted it to be like, oh, so it's like my Logos in the game could be like a sponge, where it's like whatever he's around, he absorbs that, and like what he can only do what he sees this person doing.
Okay,
that's what I think happened.
Okay, cool. So Space Pope, bad guy.
So Ontos is out. It's wrong. It's not an accurate representation of the Father. Logos,
not even the analogy
wrong.
that he's trying to go for. I think, which would be, you know how some people are like, God made the world, then he cheesed it.
Right, deism.
Like he's gone. Right. So yeah, like I think that might be what he's going for, unless Ontos shows up again, which I'm sure he does.
And, if there's going to be a third game, he'll probably be in that game.
Okay.
It's whatever it is.
And he's probably the super bad guy who resurrects the Spope, and now he's half Spope, half angel, like Sephiroth.
I would not be surprised if
except
some angel,
not being cool and good like
angelology.
Sephiroth.
Yes, well. Anyway, so Ontos is out. Logos, that's that's pretty blasphemous almost. Like it's like you're saying that the word, the Logos is the word that everyone knows is the word, like is the word in Greek, ancient Greek. But if you know your New Testament, that's always a word that's referred to as Jesus. So you're saying that like Jesus is just like a sponge who just so happened to absorb the Father's will.
All right, let me take some guesses here at what Malos can do. All right,
Malos, okay,
right? Because that's Logos.
That's Logos, yes.
Yeah. Let me take some guesses at his abilities.
Yeah.
All right, so he's a sponge. Okay, sure. I mean, Jesus performed miracles, so this guy's probably a spellcaster.
Yes, he has supernatural powers.
Of course. Probably doesn't fight. Well, he's a blade though, so he has a weapon. Mm-hmm. Does he fight with it?
Yes.
Okay.
He has like a similar looking weapon that the other.
I mean, I need chapter and verse to see where Jesus was a swordsman, but sure, the analogy breaks down. Sure, it's a video game.
Well, I'll get you right to it. The main sort of crux of his personality is that he just wants to destroy everything.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
You know,
he wants.
Takahashi didn't read John 3:17.
Yes.
He stopped right before there.
Yes, he didn't read Luke 65. You know, there's no Luke 65.
You know, he's an avid reader of Revelation 108.
That's right. So, that's out. That breaks down in the analogy. And then the third analogy, the Numa, who was Pyra, who is the Rex's blade. And this is what annoyed me in terms of storyline for a while. I was like, it reaches a point where, like, you know how there's that one-upping that happens with villains and heroes, like we were talking about. Reaches a point where, like, there's so much power levels happening that at some point you unleash the true power of the Aegis of Pyra, and which is Numa. It's actually written on her suit.
Okay.
That her name is Numa, and actually written in Greek too.
If you can call it a suit, yeah.
Yes, but well, it's a full body suit, but it's very form-fitting. Anyway, but her special ability is that she can make real what you want. And at that point, I was like fully out of the story. I was like, you can't make an interesting story where the main character has a weapon who just can will things into existence. And then
she's the miracle machine.
After that, I was like, oh, that's so stupid. And then I go talk to the architect, and I learned that her name is Numa there. And I'm like, oh, I see what he's doing. He's taking, like, sort of like The Secret. Like, there's a book called The Secret that came out. It was a fad book for a while, I think 10 years ago. A fad in some churches, and it was vending machine God. It was genie God, as you said.
Great.
It was just like, whatever you want, you make it real, and prosperity doctrine. Prosperity will come to you if you want it, and all this kind of stuff, right? So that's a direct correlation to the Holy Spirit in this analogy.
Yeah.
Trying to say that the Holy Spirit is just a vending machine. So to conclude this sort of package here, we have Takahashi. We already went over how messed up his theology is in his previous games. The big crescendo sort of like climax moment is you find out what all the true names of all the three Aegises are. And every one of them is completely wrong to how it could ever be in reality. And maybe you could say, well, that's to be expected, right? He's trying to take liberty, artistic liberty. Okay, but if people don't know about the theology, they might be like, oh, that's really like interesting how, like, it's really similar to Christianity. And I'm here to say, this is a terrible analogy for Christianity. Ontos is wrong, Logos is wrong, and Pneuma is wrong, because Ontos is talking about the being of God. Logos is not a sponge. And Pneuma is not your personal vending machine. So that's sort of the main point I wanted to conclude with, is just like, I think this was really helpful. I think this was really fun. And I think that it's good to not just sort of passively accept things and just be like, hey, it has some religious symbolism in it, therefore it must be speaking truth. We don't learn theology from various art forms, whatever medium it is, not just video games, but any art form. We learn them from study and diving deep into proper context of literary, cultural, etc. So, yeah. And the architect, of course, also being the god of the universe doesn't work as well. So,
does the architect and the space pope at least have, like, the phone numbers of each other so they can call each other?
Because
I mean, he's not truly a space pope.
The space pope,
unless he can talk to the space god.
What happens is the space pope, he infiltrates Elysium, which is where the architect is.
Oh, okay.
It's like a physical place, with a physical, like, laboratory facility, right? And he infiltrates it, and he steals Malos and Pyra, or Ontos, or Logos and Pneuma.
So he didn't even have good intentions. He was evil from the beginning.
No, he takes them because as a pursuit of knowledge, a pursuit of the greater truths of reality. But he does become evil over time. And he considers himself to be worthy of godhood because he was allowed to do that.
Sure.
It's like no one stopped him. Like the god of his universe didn't stop him from taking the supreme power and knowledge of all the universe.
Sure.
In the
Okay.
Aegises. Therefore, he's like, oh well, I'm good to just go ahead and become a god now. And then the architect like responds to that question that the characters in the party ask him, like, well, why did you let him do that? And and the architect's just like, because remember, he's just a dude. He's not actually God. He's just a dude. So he's just like, I believe that that the Aegises needed to be out there, out in the world, so that they could acquire knowledge, so that they could become the perfect human, and therefore I could make people perfect in the future.
Sure.
So like, yeah, he didn't have a phone number to the architect, but he believed that architect gave him his blessing, basically.
Okay.
So it's a real mess of a story. I think that people are gonna go into it, go through the game, and be like, wow. They're gonna leave the game at the ending, and be like, wow, that was really interesting. Really gave me a lot to think about.
Yeah.
And for me, I left the game thoroughly annoyed, both in terms of gameplay and story and how it's presented, and also in terms of the poor theology therein.
Well, let me ask you this, Chris. You vented now. Do you feel better?
Yeah, I feel great. Yeah, I mean, I felt good and secure because I happen to know all these things. But
good. Well, I hope that's the last I have to hear of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 for the rest of my life.
Well,
because it's been a few conversations.
Well, if the third one comes out,
no, please, no.
If the third one comes out,
Takahashi, you're not allowed to make your epics. Stop it.
I would
or at least he's not allowed to play them.
I might not. I don't know. I might not buy it, but because I'm kind of disappointed with the second one. But if the third one comes out, I might at least look it up and be like, okay, what do you got cooking this time, Takahashi? You know?
Yeah.
Anyway, hopefully we can maybe do this again for a different game.
Sure.
And yeah. So thank you for joining us, guys. Please check out our Twitch. I think it's going to be in the description, right?
Always in the description.
All right, cool.
Also check out other videos on the Bible Discovery TV channel.
Yeah. All right. Take care.
Check out our other videos and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter and friend us on Facebook. Feel free to check Chris and I out over on twitch.tv/ZarOcto and make sure to leave a like. See you guys next week.